Daily Cyber Briefing for Tuesday, the 21st of May. I'm Stephen Ridgway. iOS has released a patch, or is a patch for iOS. 17.5.1 is the latest patch, and it's an interesting one. 17.5 introduced a bug, which I think most of us will find quite curious, that deleted images were reappearing in Photos app. So basically, they were being resurrected. And even more interestingly, they were being resurrected even on wiped and sold devices. Now, how can this be, one says? Well, just as a reminder, when you delete something, the operating system doesn't go and find it and overwrite the thing with, a bunch of random code or all zeros or all ones or whatever, because you're bearing in mind, in the end, stuff is just stored in binary on the disk, be that a physical disk or a solid state disk or whatever. It's all kind of held in basically the same way. When something's deleted, for efficiency reasons, generally pretty much all operating systems by default will just delete the index and leave the actual data in place, which was why, back in the good old days, if you were going to sell a computer, you would wipe its hard disk, not just properly wipe it. And you could do a military wipe and all these sorts of things, which would then overwrite it with ones and then overwrite it with zeros and then overwrite it with random patterns, 10 times or whatever it might be, to make sure there were no ghosts left on the magnets. But these days it's less common to see that sort of stuff, and you just make the assumption that when stuff's been deleted or when you've reset your phone, it's actually properly dealt with. Well, it does look like they introduced a bug whereby the indices for these things were being resurrected because, excuse me, sorry, because you could historically go back and say, okay, go and re-index this disk, find me all of the unattached sectors and segments that contained data. And you could recover things that way. There used to be some before trash cans or bins or whatever. It used to be possible to buy software that would trawl your disk and go look for this stuff and bring it back. Very useful. But it is curious that that this is reappeared. Now, okay, it may be then that you just get a whole load of somebody's family gathering photos that reappear, but apparently the system is not making any decisions around this stuff, and all sorts of things that you really wish other people wouldn't get their hands on have been reappearing. So yeah, that's certainly something to be aware of. And I would say if you have got an Apple device that's running iOS 17, make sure that iOS 17.5.1 is rolled out, and that any photos which are supposed to stay deleted will in fact stay deleted. Right, QNAP, QTS 0-day has got a public remote code execution exploit rather than proof of concept. There's an exploit floating around. There are a whole bunch of vulnerabilities in QTS. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. CVEs plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 WTs. I'm not quite sure what those are, but presumably somebody else's way of categorizing vulnerabilities. So yeah, there is a proof of concept, always right the first time, for some of this stuff out there. So if you are running QNAP QTE devices, I would recommend having a look at this article. Check whether you are in fact vulnerable to these things on your particular version, and if you are, either patch or take mitigating actions. So in other matters, there is now an interesting debate going on around the security of Linux kernels. So to put it in context, Linux kernels, and Linux has, kernels as with all other stuff Linux, it's open source, which means there are lots and lots of forks of the originals. Now the original, as it were, the core of kernel is run by the team that look after the Linux kernel. So there's the Linux kernel community. It's well managed, and they're very much on top of security issues. However, the majority of Linux distributions, referred to in this article as vendors, but they're not really vendors. Well, I suppose some of them sell support and things, but the Linux distributions, they generally are not rolling in the latest kernel every time the kernel is patched or updated. What tends to happen is there are backports of important patches to the kernel that get rolled in at some point. Well, it looks like, because almost all commonly used distributions have the approach of backporting, security vulnerabilities remain in the kernel for a surprisingly long time. Now, why, do you ask, would they not do this? Well, the reason is that changes in the kernel, it's very fundamental to the entire operating system, obviously, because it's the kernel. However, when you update, change, or upgrade your kernel, it is entirely possible that a bunch of stuff in user space will stop working or stop working right, especially where inadvertently an application has been written using a feature of the kernel which has then been found to be, say, insecure, and then the default behavior's changed or whatever it may be. So a lot of the distributions, a lot of the vendors supporting distributions push for stability over security. Because, and I've kind of been through this in the past, you are endlessly playing catch up, and some applications just won't work until the updated version is released. And because, of course, a lot of these things are community developed, there's no overarching body that's coordinating these things. Generally, things catch up pretty quickly. What's the solution? Is, well, there isn't really a solution to this. Quite frankly, I used to build my own kernels. So, take the kernel source code and then just build it, but only build in the drivers I needed for whatever hardware it was that I was using, because I'm endlessly playing catch up with video drivers and network card drivers back in the day. But you could get some blinding performance if you removed the 15,000 different video drivers that came incorporated into the kernel. If you actually only put in there the stuff you needed, you could get some major performance. But it did go to show that that was then something that would have to be done and maintained relatively regularly, especially if you're like upgrading hardware or whatever. You'd have to go back and rebuild your kernel. Well, not a huge deal. So I don't know. I think in this day and age, it's slightly lazy to not keep the kernel up to date. Backports are okay, but as this particular piece of research shows, it is generally not adequate from a security perspective. So if you're running vulnerability scans on your Linux stuff and it comes up saying there are kernel vulnerabilities, don't just sort of roll your eyes and go, oh, well, that stuff never matters. It actually does. Increasingly it does. And because it's a kernel vulnerability, it means everything on that device is vulnerable one way or another. It's not constrained. If you can exploit a kernel vulnerability, the likelihood is you will have an unrestricted access to the entire device. So yeah, if you are interested in this whole thing, which I clearly am, as I'm waffling on about it, I would definitely say this article from ZDNet is worth a read. We've also then spoken quite a lot recently around deep fakes and the potential impacts that these are having on the victims of scammers. Well, the engineering giant Arup has fallen victim to a £20 million deep face video scam. So Arup is a London-based architectural design company. It's got around 18,000 employees spread over 34 offices. It's been going nearly 80 years. It's one of these very large architecture and design companies with a significant global impact. Well, an employee in the Hong Kong office was duped into a video chat with deep fakes of the company's CFO and other employees. This employee eventually sent $25 million to scammers over 15 transactions as a consequence of that. Yeah, so be aware. This. I'm not altogether surprised that this is happening. I am shocked at the amount of money that's been pilfered as part of this. But yeah, it is definitely worth being very, very cautious around stuff. If you're not expecting to send $25 million worth of stuff to somebody, and the only authorization you appear to have is on a video call, be suspicious. It is very difficult. It takes quite a brave employee to look the CFO in the eye and say, I'm not going to do what you've just asked me to do unless I get authorization in a different way. I suppose one thing you could do under those circumstances is, as you have started to do this stuff, just send confirmation emails to the actual CFO saying, I've done as you asked. The CFO, if it wasn't the real one, if the CFO, the real CFO, gets something saying, "Oh, I've just sent $26 million to somebody or other," or even if you're brave, you would say, "Just please confirm I'm just about to send $26 million." But it does take brave employees to do that. So yeah, watch out. I mean, there are ways you can spot deep fakes, and like I said before, back in the 70s or 80s. Special effects on the TV or in movies looked amazing. You would look at them and you think, wow, that's so real. And now you look at it and go, oh, green screen. Yeah, green screen. I can see that. That's really old hat. So you do learn to recognise this stuff. And there is a raging debate around how good people are at identifying deep fakes. But all the tests, is this a deep fake? Which of these two pictures is a deep fake? I think most people, me included, would be reasonably successful in picking out the fakes at the moment. However, if you're expecting to see the company's CFO and a bunch of other people, and you kind of know them in the sense of it doesn't come as a surprise, your brain will gloss over the anomalies unless you train it not to. So this is kind of worrying. So just remain vigilant. Ensure your organisation has robust processes for making payments. I'm aware of at least. Well, in fact, there are many organisations where the CFO's accounts have been taken over and then used to authorise illegitimate payments to people. So you just got to keep vigilant with these things. Well, there's been an interesting piece of research which is reported in InfoSecurity magazine, which is looking at how easy is it to jailbreak AI chatbots. And the answer is extraordinarily easy. So bypassing, so that 4 of the major chatbot models were tested. They haven't referred to them by their actual names, they've just given them colours. But the point is, well, you don't really want people to know how easy it is to do some of this stuff. So bypassing large language model safeguards, success between 90 and 100% of cases. Which is how do you get your LLM to do something it isn't supposed to do? Well, it's relatively easy to do that. However, the other side of it is if you set these jailbroken LLMs tasks to do things like capture the flag challenges, they're working at about high school level. So they can solve simple capture the flag challenges. If you test them with university level cybersecurity challenges, pretty much universally fail. So this is an interesting article for 2 reasons. One of them is, as suspected, constraining AI is going to be really quite difficult. But the other side of it is, it's pretty damn amazing, but it's not there yet. And it will be, I think, probably longer than we expect before it really becomes a significant threat. I mean, I've seen some of the code that AI can generate. It is not universally good. The other side of it is, the last time I looked up any stats on this, if you ask an LLM questions, about 20% of what it tells you is just made up. So they're not there yet, but they are getting there. And finally, from me, some students in the States have spotted a washing machine app flaw that gives out free washes. Why am I raising this with you? You may well ask. Because the vulnerability is in an API. The API assumes it's talking to an app. So, okay, interesting question. Do you really need your laundromat, laundrette washing machine to be on the internet? You can't remotely put your washing in the washing machine or remotely take it out and dry it. So why do you need to be able to remotely turn the bloody thing on? You've got to be there. So go and push the buttons, I suspect this to me looks like one of those. Oh, this is a brilliant idea. Yeah, well, it wasn't, because the apparently the solution relied on the security being done on the app on the device that was telling the washing machine what to do, But if you simply sent commands to the API, it would do them. Well, two lessons to learn from this one, in my clearly not so humble opinion. One is, don't use technology to do stupid things. And the other one is, if you are going to use technology to do stupid things, think about the fact that you need to actually secure it, not necessarily against nation-state actors trying to wash their t-shirts, but more against like that 90% of the population that's just curious to see what goes on. If can I make it do this? Maybe it isn't 90%, maybe it's a smaller amount, but I would say almost all students would be along the lines of, can I save 50p by sending the commands straight to the washing machine rather than paying for it via the app? Anyway, that one tickled me. So that's enough from me for today. Hope you have a good Tuesday.